All right, guys, what's going on? It's Jack, and welcome back to another video. Now, originally, I wasn't going to talk about this simply because of the fact that I really don't care that much about Call of Duty, and with anything drama that goes to Call of Duty, I just kind of shake my head, roll my eyes, and I'm like, whatever. As a matter of fact, to some sort of degree, whenever I see something negative happening with Call of Duty, it kind of puts a smile on my face because, quite frankly, the community has certainly been taken advantage of by Activision time and time again, and they've just been abusing the system. They've been milking the cash cow that is Call of Duty absolutely dry. They've been doing less, and yet they've been still succeeding financially, whatever, right? Which leads me to this conversation. Now, well, the reason why I decided to do this video was because about a day or two ago, Drifter released about a 20 or so minute video kind of breaking everything down, and I'm like, this is actually a little bit deeper than I actually thought, because there's a lot that goes on in play here. Now, I'm not going to do a tit for tat in terms of what Drifter did, right? I didn't write down any notes of what he wrote in terms of what he said in terms of the highlights and stuff like that. I didn't do that, and I wasn't going to go over all that. Chances are you guys have seen that video already. If not, you've seen other videos of it or whatnot. Or if anything, I could just give you a link down in the description below, so that way you guys can see that thing. But instead, what I want to talk about is, can Hecz and Scump actually win this lawsuit, or at least get a settlement in this lawsuit against Activision Blizzard? Because, again, I'm going to try to walk the fence on this one. I'm not going to go too negative or too positive. I'm not going to lean one side over the other. At least I'm going to try not to, as best as I can. But over the course of history, one thing that I've always mentioned in previous videos is that you can't really ignore historic facts. Now, what am I talking about historic facts here? So back in the day, during the Modern Warfare 2 era, well, Vince and Zampella ended up leaving, the company or whatnot, and they actually sued Activision and won. And to go even further in historic facts against people that are your, average or above average people versus the super rich, back about, I don't know, 20 years ago, give or take, Jerry the King Lawler, who worked for the WWF at the time, which is now WWE, or what ended up being WWE, actually sued Vince McMahon and won. So all these things basically show you, these historic facts tell you that, yes, it is possible, especially if everything is legit and if you've got the evidence and all that kind of stuff, because as you guys know, in a court of law, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. Now, I'm not a lawyer, and I'm sure that there are a lot of you guys that know a lot more about legality sort of things than I do. But despite all that, I still want to have this conversation because to my knowledge, there's three possible outcomes with this. Either A, this lawsuit or complaint or whatever you want to call it gets dismissed. B, they reach a settlement. Or C, it goes to trial. And if it goes to trial, either one of two things are going to happen. Either Hecz and Scump are going to win, or Activision Blizzard is going to win. Right? Now, obviously, as we know, the deeper the pockets any entity has, the more difficult it is to kind of take them down. Okay? So, now, granted, that's not always the case, but, if you just take a decent look around you in terms of things going on and stuff like that, it's not really hard to kind of come up with that conclusion. Now, granted, that's not every case, but you guys get the. But here is what I'm thinking. I actually believe that Scump and Hecz actually do have a decent chance. Now, I know that some of you guys are going to say, well, Activision Blizzard owns Call of Duty, so therefore they can do anything they want and with anybody in it. Now, when you look at it for that aspect, like kind of like the comparison that Drifter made, like obviously nobody really owns football or whatnot, at least not to my knowledge or anything like that. But however, this is Call of Duty we're talking about, and Activision Blizzard. Now, Microsoft owns Call of Duty, so therefore they can do whatever they want. However, with that being said, when, according to Scump, from what I've seen in Drifter's video, from what I heard, was that when he was approached to sign the contract or whatnot, I mean, the guy didn't have any time whatsoever. It was like during a photo shoot. He had absolutely no idea. He had absolutely no time whatsoever to look over the contract, to give it to his lawyer or anything like that. It's like at that point in time, at that moment, right then and there, he had to sign or be out completely. And so I guess he signed. And what ended up happening was, oh man, did he screw himself by signing? Did Hecz screw himself by signing? Or anybody else that signed for that matter? Let's just say, to put it nicely, they got the shorter end of the stick. Again, if you want all the details that were really going to be wide open, eye-opening, it's, again, I'll leave a link in the description to Drifter's video, and he can explain it way better than I can. He can give all the details in much better and faster fashion than I can, so go and check that out. But with that being said, however, the thing that makes me say that they have a chance is not just because of what happened, but because of how it happened. And it all started at the beginning. And that is how they were approached. Because to my knowledge, and to my knowledge and everything that I learned from watching Drifter's video, is that is illegal to like approach something like that. Like, the people if they're gonna sign a contract or whatnot, you got to give these people time to, the option and the time for them to look over the contract, to, sign it over to send it over to their attorney, so that way their attorneys can look at it and all that kind of stuff, and basically translate the fancy wordage, so to speak, right? The fancy vocabulary of the contract, so that way you know everything that's going on. But basically, it was that didn't seem to be the case. Now, the problem here is that Scump needs to be able to prove that happened, right? He can say that it happened, but at the end of the day, he needs to be able to prove that happened. So I don't think that should be too much of a problem, but at the same time, you just never know. And on top of that, with all of the kind of demands that were in that contract in terms of what Hecz and Scump would be giving up, as well as the players of other organizations and all that kind of stuff, just to be able to play in the CDL, is absolutely ridiculous. I think that if they were given the time to actually review those contracts, and I don't know what happened with other teams. I really don't. I don't know if other teams were given a time, or if they had the same sort of, the same sort of structure brought on to them, to where they were rushed, or they had no choice but just to sign right then and there, or they were out or something like that. I don't know. But with that being said, it's like, yeah, holy crap. They definitely got the short end of the stick when it comes to that. That is for sure. And it just isn't right. So I guess they're suing for $120 million. I've seen some other videos out there that are saying 680 or something like that $1 million or whatever, but it's basically, in terms of Scump and Hecz, basically $120 million. And as a matter of fact, I even learned a few interesting facts, and that is that, number one, that I guess Optic Gaming is worth over $100 million, which again, which just goes to show you how ignorant I am on the subject. But I didn't think Optic Gaming was worth that much. I understand that they're the most popular out of all the, Call of Duty esports teams, yes, but I didn't think the whole thing was worth $100 million, if not slightly more. So that just goes to show you. And I am aware that they've made, lots of money when you combine things like sponsorship, prize money, and everything else that goes with it, and streaming and all the content they make and all that kind of stuff. Sure, but yeah, as the organization as a whole being like worth like as much as it is kind of surprising. But anyway, perhaps that doesn't make sense when you kind of add in all the money that they get from sponsorships and all that other stuff. But anyway, the thing that I'm going to say is the fact that the reason why I think they're going to win is because it doesn't seem to be legal in terms of how they were approached to sign the contract, because they were never getting time. But at the same time, Activision has something on their side, and that is the fact that they own Activision Call of Duty. But with that being said, there's also one more thing. One question that I have in my mind is, now obviously we know that this Call of Duty League, or CDL, or whatever you want to call it, the way franchising happened and all that kind of stuff, when all this took place, this happened years ago, to my knowledge. Now, obviously, it could have taken years for this lawsuit to be where it is now, I guess. I personally don't think so, in terms of like, hey, we're suing you. It's not like it should take years for that to happen. So my big question is, why now? Because if they were getting screwed from the start, I'm thinking, like, why is this lawsuit happening now, a handful or whatever years later? That's the big question that I have. That's the big thing for me, the question that I have. And again, at the same time, I don't follow everything as closely. I used to, every once in a blue moon, like years ago, I'd watch a COD Champs here and there. I think the last COD Champs that I saw was actually the one, which one? The one when Crimsix was still competing, but I was hardly watching it at all. The one in Modern Warfare 2019, I watched at the end because Crimsix had made it to the finals, and I really wanted him to win a third, and which he did, even though it was all online or whatnot, and it was during, the vid time and everything like that. So That one I did see, in terms of like that particular match. I don't watch the entirety or what, um, but yeah, I don't follow very closely. But all I know is that the whole CDL thing has been around for a while, if I'm not mistaken. So it's like, why now? If there was a lot of all this negative stuff going on, why now? Or maybe it's because it's been a combination of a whole things that have accumulated over time in terms of the limitations that were put on Scump. Like, for instance, like he couldn't stream other games or whatnot or something like that, and it's his channel and he should be able to. And on top of that, it wasn't during the season of Call of Duty. And the way they treated Hecz and stuff like that, and how they didn't want him to be like the majority owner, despite the fact that it was all his and shit, and he had to give up like, what, 92% of his ownership or something like that, and everything else that happened. I'm telling you guys, if you watch that Drifter video, you will be shocked. Now, do I think that they have a chance? Yes, because of how they were approached to sign those contracts and how they were like not, they weren't given time to give it to their attorneys and stuff like that. I mean, that everybody who's, you know, going to sign a contract should, you know, it's I mean, they, you know, it's simple as that. I think that's illegal, to my knowledge. Basically, like, you know, not give the person the option to, like, you know, like, you either sign this now or you're out or something like that, whatever. I don't know. But you never know how it is when it comes to stuff like that, and when it comes to people that actually know the law in and out and what they can do and loopholes and all that kind of stuff that will go on, especially with multiple attorneys, which we know Activision has. So, but when you look at how things were approached and all the other things that went out in and out, and that spiraled from that, and then how Scump was basically like, you know, again, wasn't allowed to do this or that with his channel and stuff like that. I mean, talk about overreach, dude. You're selling yourself short. But and then of course there's the fines and all that other stuff. So all this stuff was something that was just accumulated over time, and I guess it just didn't get better, and then after all the damages, right, that they've lost from in terms of finances, they're like, probably like a few years later, they're like, yeah, we're gonna sue or what? I don't know. But yeah, this is absolutely big. I think they would settle for a settlement. I don't think that either side would want it to go to trial. But at the same time, you know, winning this kind of a lawsuit against Activision Blizzard is, it's not, on one hand, I want to say it is kind of cut and dry, but at the same time, it isn't, right? So it's like, on one hand, yeah, there's definitely seems some wrongdoing or whatnot, and then on the other hand, it's like, well, these guys own Call of Duty. But that seems to be the only thing that Activision has, you know, going for it. Like the fact that they own Call of Duty, right? It's not like they own a sport or something. They own COD. I mean, literally, so they can do whatever they want with it. But I don't think one of those things is to approach people and not give them the opportunity to, like, look over a contract and read it or have a legal representative. I think that is where it kind of get interesting and fishy. So therefore, if the contract, in terms of the way that it was approached and nobody had looked over it, you know, if that wasn't done legally, right, because they restricted the person from getting any legal representative to look over it or to look over it themselves, then basically, despite the fact that the contract was signed, you know, maybe that doesn't count because it wasn't legal one. But at the same time, you got to be able to prove that. And at the same time, the other side might say, well, regardless of which the contract was signed, so therefore the person was binded to that contract or whatever. I don't know. Like I said, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that know a lot about this. Like, there's a few people that know about this even more than I do in terms of how deep it is, that kind of stuff. But holy crap, this is going to be very interesting, and it's going to be really interesting to see what happened. So this is where I kind of want to pass it off to you guys. Do you guys think that this is going to settle? Do you guys think that this is going to get dismissed? Or do you guys think it'll actually go all the way to trial? Like, do you think that Hecz and Scump are actually going to take this all to trial? Because what's going to happen is that if it gets to a settlement, if there's not a dismissal, and if it gets to a possible settlement, then obviously, you know, Activision's going to want to give the least amount of money possible that Scump and Hecz would accept, and whether or not they accept it, depending on whatever money's thrown out there, we'll see. Because ultimately, you know, a lot of things like this happen all the time. Settlements are more likely to happen and stuff like this. But if, let's just say for argument's sake, if this were to go to trial, this would be very, very interesting in terms of just how deep the rabbit hole will go. Because then you'd be talking about things like how, like when Scump was fined or whatnot and all that kind of stuff for speaking his opinion, right, about the product, right? I mean, it's his opinion. So it's like, you know, and then he was fined for speaking his opinion about what he said about Modern Warfare 2019 and all that kind of stuff. And then he got fined a second time. And then somebody else asked him a question on stream and he's like, I ain't getting fined again or something like that. So Um, yeah, you see what I'm going at here? We can go really deep into this, and then we can even, who knows, if it goes to trial, maybe EOMM might be brought up. Can you guys imagine that? Even though that's not exactly what the trial is about, it might be something that gets brought up that might catch the attention of possibly other legalities, right? So if it were to go to trial, then Activision might even find themselves in trouble following this trial after it finishes, or even during. There could be another case where you never know. I don't know. Again, this is why this conversation is so interesting to me. So yeah, I just wanted to. There was no way I didn't want to talk about it, because quite frankly, I wanted your guys' input on this. And for those of you guys that know more about how all this stuff works, by all means, in the comment section, educate me and everybody else. So anyway, that pretty much concludes this. So let me know down in the comment section what you think. And of course, what do you think? Is it going to be a trial? Is it going to be a dismissal? Or is it going to be, or is there going to be a settlement? And if there is going to be a settlement, do you guys think that Hecz and Scump are going to get their 120 million? Or do you guys think Activision is going to try to, talk them into less? Or, because if they go too low, I don't know. I don't know if Hecz and Scump will accept that, but we'll see. Money talks and bullshit walks. But anyway, that's all I got for this one, guys. Let me know down in the comment section. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you all for taking the time to watch and or listen, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.